Ladies and gentlemen, don't ever let it be known that the Doc is a one-trick pony that can only do one or two things. That is not me. I figured I'd try something a little bit different today. My apologies for eating while talking. I've got only a limited amount of time to get through this. Um, Comments on last night's Raw. I sometimes don't understand how certain people can be so damn negative about everything. I just don't get it. Hustle, I love you, brother, but my goodness, an F for last night's Raw. That had two of the most dramatic talking segments that I can remember since CM Punk's promo back in the summer. So I do not understand how you could possibly call that an F. But to each their own. I'm always around to give more of the positive side of things. So, looking at Chris Jericho and CM Punk's segment, without question, that was honestly the thing I was most looking forward to last night. I wanted to see how they kicked off that feud verbally. Because for those of you younger fans that are used to all this wrestling happening on TV, I'm always the one sitting back and saying, look, wrestling is for pay-per-view. When I grew up watching wrestling, that's really all that's all it was in the WWE. In the WWE, the TV shows were due for nothing more than to hype an event. And so the talking segments, that is what sells pay-per-views. You can't just sell a pay-per-view by actions alone. That's what the interviews are for. That's an integral part of professional wrestling. That's what makes the promo such an important part of the game. That's one of the things I like about Dolph Ziggler. He's so much improved. He's gotten up to this level when he was down here originally in his interview skills. Now he's up there at a top 10 level in the WWE right now. He's very entertaining on the microphone, and subsequently he's probably going to get more opportunities to be involved in main events like he was at the Royal Rumble. That aside, CM Punk and Chris Jericho knocked one out of the park last night as far as I'm concerned. They did exactly what I thought they needed to do in order to actually have heat on their match at WrestleMania. That was always what was going to be the big factor to me is Chris Jericho has historically always suffered at WrestleMania from crap storylines. Whether it be 10 years ago in the infamous storyline that involved Stephanie McMahon, on paper, maybe it was a good idea, but in execution, it was terrible. 2 years ago in the feud with Edge, a match that should have, much like the one with Triple H, had a lot of heat on it, just didn't. And the main reason was because the feud stunk. You know, I love Edge and I love Jericho, but the whole spear, I mean, that was a goofy way of getting Edge over as a babyface, and it didn't really work until much later. It wasn't a WrestleMania storyline for a world title. This is a WrestleMania story for a world title. Two guys that legitimately believe themselves to be the best in the world, trying to prove it. And last night was a great example of why they each could make a legitimate claim. I thought it was great. The delivery wasn't perfect throughout everything, but it doesn't matter. They made up for it. I mean, they did the little things that are necessary to make sure that beyond a shadow of a doubt, CM Punk and Chris Jericho got their points across. That was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought, honestly, that segment stole the show last night. And I think it was the type of thing that will help them set up to potentially steal the show at WrestleMania. There was no way that Jericho versus Punk was ever going to have the chance to steal the show unless it built enough heat to be able to tell WWE management, we got to make sure this match gets plenty of time. You know, Edge versus Jericho 2 years ago, the feud was just so bland that they could get away with not giving them an opportunity to steal the show. And although that was a very good match, it did not reach its potential or the expectations that I had for it because of that. So, nevertheless, bottom line, Chris Jericho versus CM Punk, that's going to be a hell of a match. That is going to be one hell of a match at WrestleMania. Book your tickets if you haven't bought your tickets already. If you love Chris Jericho and CM Punk, I would Bet my bottom dollar that those two go out there and have a fantastic match. And that's going to be the barometer. To me, that match right there is going to be the barometer that lets us know, is WrestleMania 28 the best of all time? Or is WrestleMania 28 just going to be another in a long line of very good WrestleManias? Kind of like WrestleMania 26 was very good. WrestleMania 23 and 22 were very good. They weren't classics. They weren't the best of all time. They didn't creep up towards that top 5 WrestleManias of all time level, but they were still quite good. Chris Jericho and CM Punk, if that match delivers, WrestleMania 28 could quite possibly go down in history as the best of all time, because I don't think there's any doubt that Triple H and The Undertaker are going to knock one out of the park. You may not like their match from last year. Maybe you did. But frankly, that match, to a lot of people, to guys like myself who appreciate storytelling and selling, that match was fantastic. You put it inside Hell in a Cell, maybe add a little Shawn Michaels. It's going to be brutal. And I would be very surprised if they did not have a universally accepted as classic WrestleMania match on April 1st. And I personally think Rock and Cena are going to deliver as well. I don't think that the wrestling so much is going to matter in that match so much as just simply the atmosphere will help make up for any shortcomings that may exist. Again, I apologize for eating while doing this, but only so much time in the day. Now, The Rock and John Cena, I thought their segment last night was incredible, to be quite honest with you. I thought their segment last night was so full of drama. Anything that The Rock says. And I didn't think that The Rock's delivery was that great last night. He didn't seem like The Rock. He sounded like he was giving a Dwayne Johnson interview more than he was giving the jabroni-beating, pie-eating, trailblazing, eyebrow-raising kind of an interview that we've become so accustomed to. The Rock was kind of ordinary last night compared to his standards. But the thing about The Rock that's awesome is that even on a ho-hum night for him, everybody responds to what he says. He's earned that in everything that he does. I mean, he turned Kung Pao bitch, which is probably the dumbest catchphrase he's ever come up with, into something that the crowd was chanting like crazy. And that, of course, is trending or whatever nonsense. I mean, sure, who cares about Twitter and what's trending or not. But grapes, by the way, good for you. The interesting thing to me about the Rock segment, don't you think he kind of seemed like maybe he wasn't that comfortable and confident? That's the thing that it seemed to me. He seemed like the gripes that people are throwing at him are legitimately getting to him to a certain extent. It seemed to me that maybe he thought, I've got to address these key issues that the rumors are saying about him not being all that great to deal with backstage and how he's not doing anything good for the business. I don't think he needs to take that approach. I don't think he's got a damn thing to apologize for, as written in my column a couple of days ago. He's The Rock. He's the great one. And that's not a nickname. I mean, he legitimately is one of the top 5 best performers I've ever seen. I've been watching wrestling for close to 30 years. The only talker I can think that's on his level with consistency is Ric Flair. The Rock is more charismatic than Flair, gets the crowd more involved than Flair. I think The Rock clearly is the most charismatic performer of all time in terms of his speaking ability. Ric Flair may still be the best talker. That would be another conversation for another day, but you can legitimately put The Rock down as either 1A or number 1 on the best talkers of all time category. I don't think there's any question about that. And even if you wanted to try to argue that, you could not tell me he's not in the top 5 or top 3. I can't imagine that anybody would say he's not in the top 3, because he can just rattle off 20 straight minutes of nothing but brilliance. I smell what he's cooking. I always have. I think he's great, and I think what he's going to do at WrestleMania will be awesome. But last night he did seem a little bit maybe timid. It wasn't sing along with The Rock. It wasn't the normal thing. It was it seemed more like a personal interview, and John Cena has made it personal. John Cena, what he said last night, rattled The Rock even more, and it actually made The Rock seemingly mess up at the end of his promo before he went into the smell what The Rock is cooking catchphrase there to end the show. So I think Cena's kind of getting to it, because what Cena is saying is laced with what some people could consider to be truth. I think it's bullshit personally, but there are plenty of y'all out there that think, hey, The Rock is not doing as much good as maybe people like myself are saying he is. To each their own. John Cena ought to be winning you over, though, because these are usually the same people that are complaining about The Rock right now, are usually the same people complaining about everything, complaining about how John Cena is not good enough to be the man and how he's stale and boring. John Cena is anything but stale and boring right now. He's proving to me, and hopefully he's proving to you, why this guy is also one of the best of all time. He is. When it comes to speaking, when John Cena is motivated, then what John Cena says resonates. What John Cena says is interesting, entertaining, and exciting. The problem is that, yeah, he is the face of the company. He's always out there. And you can't be great all the time when you have to be on TV 52 weeks a year, plus another 12 pay-per-views or 13 pay-per-views, plus all kinds of different interviews on top of that, plus occasional appearances on SmackDown. It's understandable that he's somewhat stale in the general sense, but right now he's doing some of the best work of his career. He's motivated. He's ready. He wants to be the man. He wants to be the guy that people talk about once this feud with The Rock is over. And he has to be, because Rock's going away again, and we'll be left with John Cena rowing the ship. I'm very interested in seeing exactly how John Cena handles things from here on out, because the last 2 weeks of his promos have been some of the best mic work he's done in quite a while. Really, since the stuff that he did with Punk back in the summer last year. When you're motivated, when you've got something to creatively sink your teeth into, that's when we can see special things happen in wrestling. In wrestling, I think that people need to consider taking a step back. If you watched last night's show and you thought it was terrible, then I question your sanity. Because how in the world can two segments like that not resonate with you as a wrestling fan? If those two segments can't make you just take a step back, sit down, relax, kick your feet up, maybe pop open a cold beverage, and just enjoy, I don't know what can. What do you want to see if not that? What do you want to see on television as a wrestling fan? Especially those of you that have been fans for a long time and that have seen the history of the business. What more do you want than segments that draw the emotions out of people? And if not you at home, then at least sit back and appreciate the emotions it's drawing out of people elsewhere. Because Portland was definitely invested in both of those segments. We could see it. Chanting CM Punk's name, chanting things at Chris Jericho, chanting The Rock, singing along with The Rock, reiterating his goofy catchphrases that he came up with on the fly. Everything John Cena said zeroed in on the personal issue of this feud. Anybody that said 2 months ago that Rock Cena, in terms of the feud, is disappointing, this is a lesson. Last night and the week before are a lesson to be learned. Everything's not always going to be perfect. Far from it. It's just not the way the world works, guys. Things are not always going to be perfect. What do you want? Do you want perfection? You're not going to find that all the time. Remember the CM Punk and John Cena feud? There were like 2 great segments throughout that entire feud. Everything else was just ho-hum. But it was awesome, because if you take into account that those 2 segments, that's what you're going to remember from that feud. That's why CM Punk and John Cena is a feud they can come back to. It's because what they are able to do once they're actually head to head. Once the feud's actually getting going. John Cena and The Rock, all it's just been something that's been talked about. It's been talked about. That's it. It's just been something talked about over the last few months. This is the feud. Last week, this week, next week, the following week, the next 5 weeks. That's the feud. That's the reason why that feud's going to be great. And it's not because of what happened at the Survivor Series or happened a year ago or 9 months ago. It's about right now. It's about letting it play out in the here and now. And what happened last night was dramatic. It was the best. It was the most dramatic thing you can see in the sport of professional wrestling. You're not going to see anything more dramatic than that. That was awesome. I liked the Jericho Punk segment a little bit more, but the fact of the matter is that Rock Cena segment was awesome in its own way. So just sit back and enjoy this, guys, because it's not going to get any better. You realistically may not ever be able to take a bigger collection of stars than we've got going onto the card at WrestleMania 28. This is going to be a card that's got something for everybody. Daniel Bryan and Sheamus, maybe plus Randy Orton, we'll see. Rapid fire. It's going to be interesting. We'll see if they add Orton. I don't know if they will. I would like to see, I'd be okay with it one way or the other. But I can tell you this, no matter what, that's going to be a good match. And that's going to be the type of match that is not going to have significant story behind it. It's not going to have brilliant mic work behind it. It's going to be just your standard traditional wrestling feud. So for those of you that like standard traditional wrestling feuds, that's going to be the match for you. That's going to be the match you can sink your teeth into and go for it. But let the rest of us sit back and enjoy the Jericho Punk mic work and the Rock Cena mic work and the Undertaker Triple H mic work. Because give credit where credit is due. Triple H has been doing really, really well on the microphone over the last couple of weeks. Last few weeks to a month since Taker came back. You don't need anything more than that. I mean, this is going to be an amazing wrestling card. And I would really like to see Shaquille O'Neal versus The Big Show get added to this card as a one-on-one match, because I think The Big Show's legacy is ultimately going to be that he managed to have really good performances against guys that weren't wrestlers. To this day, that match he had with Floyd Mayweather at WrestleMania 24, bar none, one of the nicest surprises I've ever seen at a WrestleMania. I was lucky enough to be there live, and I sat there next to my dad and I said, I know you don't pay much attention to this type of stuff, but that match just blew expectations out of the water. That was an awesome performance. That was one of the best performances of Big Show's career. I'm writing a book right now about this particular stuff, well, I won't give it away too much. That's my WrestleMania 30 special for you guys. Nevertheless, one of the things that I mention about the Big Show, or will mention about the Big Show in that book, is that the Big Show's finest performance in his career, up to this point, has been against Floyd Mayweather. He took something that had no business being very good and made it very good. He's developed a knack in recent years for turning things that shouldn't be good. I mean, look at the feud with Mark Henry and the match he had with Mark Henry, Randy Orton, Sheamus. I mean, these guys that are supposed to, that really, well, especially Randy Orton. Randy Orton, everybody wanted to see if he could pull a great match out of Mark Henry. He couldn't, but Big Show did. Big Show had a fantastic match with Mark Henry. He elevated Mark Henry to main event status. I mean, that was an incredible match back at Vengeance last year. Big Show has a tendency to turn things that shouldn't be good into stuff that's good. Bottom line. So, I think I've talked enough. It's about the 20-minute mark. I don't know if I'll do this again. Thought I'd give it a shot. Everybody's doing YouTube videos and podcasts and stuff like that these days. Happened to be looking on my computer, happened to see that I actually do have a webcam built in. So, thought I'd give it a chance. Hope you enjoyed it. No special effects, just me sitting in front of my computer talking for a few minutes about wrestling instead of writing it down. So, tomorrow we get back to the countdown. That's going to take us through WrestleMania. Hope you enjoyed this little special video thing. We'll see if we do it again. Until then, enjoy the WrestleMania build-up. We'll see you.